You're about to see bottles, shells, and broken doors turn into pure garden magic, ideas that are clever, colorful, and completely unexpected. This is Revive Nature, where small spaces and forgotten things bloom again. In today's video, we'll explore DIY trash garden ideas that transform your patio, backyard, and tiny corners, one reclaimed piece at a time. Timestamps are available, so feel free to jump to any idea that catches your eye. And if you have a question or thought, the comment section is wide open. If this inspires you even a little, get creative. Use what you already have. Let's build something beautiful, right where we are. Maybe I'm just another channel on your screen. But behind this, there's a story. A real person. A small family chasing a dream. This isn't just content, it's a piece of who we are. So when you hit that subscribe button, you're not just supporting a video. You're helping a vision grow. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for believing in small beginnings. In a quiet corner of a tiny backyard, where the wind hums softly through branches and chrysanthemums bloom like whispers of autumn, a fence becomes more than just a boundary, it becomes a gallery. Each coconut shell hung along the wooden slats tells a small story. Once tossed aside, weathered and forgotten, these shells are now painted with care, dusty blues, muted corals, earthy sage tones, colors borrowed from a vintage palette of nature's fading summer. They dance gently with the wind, hollow and light, catching slivers of morning light like little lanterns of memory. In this space, there are no grand gestures. Only small, deliberate acts of beauty. Each shell was hand-sanded, its curves softened, then turned into something new, a fence jewel, a hanging pot, a delicate chime. Some shells are carved into floral patterns, others left simple, their paint slightly peeling, revealing the brown beneath like time-worn stories. Around the base of the fence, marigolds spill with golden laughter. Anemones stretch upward, fragile and defiant. And between their blooms, tiny sedum flowers catch the light, subtle reminders that even the smallest things thrive when given care. Visitors often pause here. Not because the space is large, it's hardly more than a sliver between a garden bench and the neighbor's wall, but because it surprises them. It reminds them that beauty isn't born from perfection or symmetry, but from giving new life to what's been overlooked. A fence, after all, is not just a boundary, it can become a stage. And coconut shells, once discarded, can become the spotlight. This is where upcycling meets poetry, where trash becomes a visual lullaby, and where a tiny yard, just a few feet wide, becomes a sanctuary painted in fallen colors and reclaimed joy. Under a rustic pergola kissed by time and softened by seasons, a curtain made of old glass bottles sways with the wind. The bottles clink gently, a song composed by the breeze, casting fractured rainbows across the patio below. It's a melody of light and shadow, of texture and memory, made from what once was trash. Each bottle once carried water, soda, or wine. Now, repurposed and reborn, they dance as garden jewelry, some transparent, others tinged in green, amber, or soft sea glass blue. Together they form a curtain, not to block the world, but to filter it, tinting reality with playful color and softened light. The pergola is small, modest in structure. Weathered wood beams host this artwork of suspended glass, while the space beneath welcomes quiet conversations or morning solitude. Around its posts, chrysanthemums bloom with confidence, and marigolds nod with golden resilience. Asters push through gravel-lined edges, their purples and whites whispering of change. There's no electric luxury here, only a few bottle-strung solar lights glowing gently by twilight. And yet, the charm is unmatched. It feels handcrafted, intentional, and deeply personal. A space where the past isn't hidden, it's highlighted. A space that doesn't ask for perfection, only for presence. Neighbors slow their steps to admire. Children peek through the colored curtain. Even passing birds seem curious. In a world rushing for the new, this corner of the backyard celebrates the rebirth of what was once discarded. This is what the bottle curtain brings, not just privacy, but poetry. A veil of color that turns a rustic pergola into a sanctuary of quiet light, movement, and creativity. In the heart of the garden, it reminds us that art lives where intention meets reuse, and that even a small backyard can hold the wonder of stained glass dreams. In a garden not defined by its size but by its soul, an old door stands where a wall once was. No longer the entryway to a house, it now invites passage into a quieter world, a world where blooms speak louder than words and everything old is beautiful again. The door came from a forgotten farmhouse, its hinges rusty, its paint chipped by time. But in this garden, it stands proud once more, transformed into an archway where seasons pause and light lingers. Painted in soft sage or pale sky blue, it rises like a sentinel, holding space for color and fragrance to pass beneath. Around its frame, fall's finest blooms gather like old friends, golden marigolds, white and pink anemones, clusters of deep purple asters. Sedum creeps at the base, its succulent leaves blushing with the cold. From above, A reclaimed iron bracket holds hanging baskets that spill with color and movement. The wind brushes through, and petals flutter like memories. This isn't a grand garden, just a sliver of backyard. But the door makes it feel like a secret, an entry not into a house, but into imagination. Children pass beneath it as if entering a storybook. Visitors slow down, hands trailing the weathered wood, eyes wide at the simplicity made special. The beauty isn't in the structure alone, but in what it holds: permission. Permission to see beyond what something was, and imagine what it could become. This door, once useless, now offers more than it ever did before: a place to frame blooms, a moment of shadow and sun, a backdrop for memories. In this quiet corner, the garden says, "Look again." What you thought was junk might be the centerpiece. What was old might be your beginning. And as fall deepens, and the blooms shift from bold to muted, the door remains, steadfast and welcoming, reminding all who pass that the most unexpected pieces often open into the most beautiful places. Tucked into the corner of a quiet backyard, where a small patio rests between warmth and bloom, an unexpected detail brings the entire space to life. A row of humble glass bottles, standing like soldiers of charm, guarding the edges of a flower bed. Each bottle has been chosen, cleaned, and placed with intention. No two are exactly alike. Some still wear the ghost of a faded label, others shine with fresh coats of sage green, ivory, and amber blush. But all of them, once destined for the recycling bin, or worse, the landfill, now find new purpose in the garden. They mark the edge between wild and intentional, between the patio stones and the mum-laced soil. Their curves catch the morning sun and glow in the golden hour. When the wind stirs, a few of the looser ones gently tap, creating a quiet clink that feels almost like a bell ringing from the earth. Behind them, chrysanthemums bloom in russet and honey, while asters whisper in purple haze. Sedum hugs the base like soft moss, adding texture to the line. The bottles don't shout, they frame. They guide the eye gently, helping each bloom to stand out more vividly. Visitors always ask, "Where did you find these?" And the gardener always smiles. Because they weren't bought. They were found, saved, repainted, repurposed. That's the beauty of it. Turning nothing into something. Creating art not from luxury, but from love. This patio isn't large. There's space for a bench, a small table, and 2 chairs. But the bottle edging makes it feel curated, deliberate, almost like stepping into a painting of a forgotten countryside morning. It's the kind of detail that makes you linger. That says, someone cared enough to make this lovely. And in this small gesture, lining a bed with bottles, the message is clear: beauty doesn't require abundance. It asks only for attention, intention, and the courage to see potential in what others overlook. At the heart of a humble garden, where leaves crunch underfoot and blossoms sway with the rhythm of autumn, something unexpected bubbles softly, a fountain made not of stone or marble, but of trash turned treasure. Its tears are formed from coconut shells, halved, smoothed, and painted in dusky rose, sage, and muted amber. Each shell cups a small pool of water, spilling gently into the next. Between them, pieces of old metal piping, a fragment of a broken teacup, and colored glass bottle shards, once considered useless, now shimmer under sunlight like a patchwork of memories. It doesn't roar or gush. It murmurs. A quiet trickle that draws birds near and minds inward. This is no ordinary fountain. It was born from what was thrown away: coconut husks from a street stall, rusty bits from a shed, fragments found on walks. Each piece tells a story not of what it was, but of what it became. Around it, fall's final celebration erupts in color. Chrysanthemums in burgundy and gold crowd the edges. Sedum peeks between stones like shy companions. Japanese anemones lean toward the sound, their white and pink faces dappled in drops. Visitors often don't realize at first what they're looking at. Only when they step closer do they see the origin: the cracked bottle, the faint logo on a smooth tin, the shell still carrying the scent of sun. And then comes the surprise, followed by admiration. It's a piece of poetry in the garden. A symbol that flow and form don't require perfection, just vision. Children sit by it, dropping petals into the flow, watching them spin and fall. Adults sip tea nearby, drawn by the soothing rhythm. In the stillness of late afternoon, the sound of water over shell becomes a kind of prayer, gentle, renewing, alive. This is the kind of beauty that refuses waste, that reimagines, that reminds us even the broken and forgotten can become something that moves, something that sings. And as the air turns cool and leaves begin to scatter, the trash-to-flower fountain keeps flowing, layered in story, rooted in intention, blooming with new life. As dusk tiptoes into the backyard, and the golden sun dips behind the neighbor's fence, a glow begins to rise, not from flames, but from bottles. Dozens of them. Once tossed aside, now painted in softened hues and suspended in a circle, forming a chandelier of light and memory. Each bottle hangs from a reclaimed iron ring, carefully wired and balanced. They sway slightly in the breeze, their soft colors, sage, blush, amber, sky blue, mirroring the fall blooms below. Inside, tiny LED candles flicker like fireflies caught in glass. Together, they cast a warm mosaic of shadows across the wooden floor of the gazebo. This chandelier isn't factory-made. It wasn't ordered or shipped. It was gathered and imagined. Built bottle by bottle. A labor of love by hands that saw beauty in the broken. Beneath it, the world slows down. The table is set with tea and dried flowers. Around the edges of the gazebo, Japanese anemones and marigolds bloom proudly, their petals catching hints of chandelier light. Asters lean gently in the corners, and sedum glows at ground level, their muted tones grounding the palette. The chandelier becomes more than a light. It becomes a gathering point, a story overhead, a halo for moments shared and remembered. Visitors sit underneath, often looking up in awe. "Is that made from real bottles?" they ask, voices hushed by the softness of the space. It is. And that's the point. This piece speaks to the power of transformation. That even the discarded can become divine. That even trash, given time and imagination, can become the centerpiece of a sanctuary. In a world often chasing the new, this chandelier reminds us that magic can be made from what already exists. That joy doesn't always cost much. And that art often begins with a single question: what if? So here, under this upcycled canopy of glass and light, the garden offers a lesson, quiet but unforgettable. Light doesn't just illuminate, it uplifts. Sometimes, the most magical parts of a garden aren't the blooms or the pathways, but the walls between them. In a narrow garden alley, where most see a forgotten strip of space, a row of old doors stands like sentinels of charm. Each one is different: a tall paneled oak door with flaking white paint, a farmhouse kitchen door repainted in mint green, a screen door with iron hinges rusted just right. Together, they form a line, not of barriers, but of invitation. They were once forgotten, leaning against fences, left out in the rain, removed from homes long past. But here, in the quiet sanctuary of a small backyard, they've become something more, dividers of space, holders of light, frames for flowers. Around their feet, sedum creeps in cool tones. Chrysanthemums bloom like old souls, deep crimson, pumpkin gold, snow white. Asters dance along the edges, softening the hard lines with wild color. Japanese anemones lean into the doors, almost as if listening. This isn't a grand transformation. There are no nails, no screws, just doors leaned, sometimes chained loosely, others wedged into garden beds. It feels temporary, and yet profoundly intentional, like a theater set built from memory. The narrow space becomes wider with every step. Each door creates a new frame, a new point of view. One hides a compost bin. Another creates a reading corner with a chair and teacup. A third divides the garden beds by color. They don't just separate, they suggest stories. Visitors pause. Children peek through old doorknobs. The gardener smiles quietly, knowing this, no one expects a wall made of doors. And that's why it works. Because in this place, design doesn't scream. It whispers. It reclaims. It honors what was once held, once open, once walked through. The doors, now still, become windows into imagination. And just like that, the narrow space becomes something else entirely, not a limitation, but a canvas. A series of quiet stages where every bloom has its spotlight, and every passerby gets to walk between stories. The front yard was once plain. A patch of earth with promise, but little charm. Until, one afternoon, the gardener began collecting fragments, not just of broken glass and discarded shells, but of memory, of time, of potential. Old bottles, once vibrant with soda and wine, were cracked and cleaned. Coconut shells, once emptied and tossed, were sanded smooth. And together, with care and vision, they became art, not loud or showy, but quiet mosaics that hugged the edges of the garden like whispered poetry. Along the walkways, the pieces fit like a puzzle of color and texture. Blues and greens from glass bottles formed flowing vines, while the rich browns and creamy whites of coconut shells made petals and leaves. The borders didn't just separate soil from stone, they told a story, inch by inch. Above them, fall flowers bloom in abundance. Chrysanthemums lean in golden clusters, sedum stretches like velvet over the edge, and Japanese anemones nod in the breeze. Each bloom made more vivid by the mosaic beneath it, color playing off color, life built on what was broken. Visitors stop and stare. Not because of grandeur, but because of delight. The kind of delight found in the unexpected, in seeing trash become treasure, chaos become design. Did you make this? they ask. And the gardener, always brushing soil from her hands, simply smiles. This is more than decoration. It's declaration. A belief that beauty lives everywhere, even in the shards. Especially in the shards. The mosaic doesn't pretend to be perfect. Some lines wander. Some pieces have edges softened by time. But that's its charm. It reflects the garden itself, wild in places, gentle in others, always alive. When the sun hits the glass just right, tiny rainbows spill onto the ground. And in those fleeting seconds, the garden seems to glow from beneath, like it's singing its own quiet hymn. So now, the front yard isn't just passed by, it's entered. Walked through slowly. Admired. It's no longer a transition. It's a destination. And all it took was the courage to see possibility in what others called trash, and the heart to piece it all back together again, edge by edge, bloom by bloom. In the middle of the garden stands a door without a wall. No hinges. No house. Just a frame, worn by rain, warmed by sun, and now, embraced by flowers. It used to open into a hallway. Long ago. Now it opens into imagination. This rustic door frame, salvaged from a forgotten farmhouse, has found new life as a trellis. Upright and proud, it anchors the space like a memory made visible. Its paint is faded, soft cream touched by time, but its purpose is fresh and blooming. From its crown beam, hanging baskets sway gently. Filled with chrysanthemums, trailing sedum, and asters in full color, they frame the air like a painting in motion. Vines of marigold climb the sides, their golden petals catching the wind as if chasing sunlight. At its base, the garden flourishes. Anemones bloom in waves, brushing the wooden legs like lace at the hem of a dress. The air is cool now, crisp with the scent of October, but the blooms remain bright, resilient in their final act of the season. This trellis isn't about order. It's about expression. About seeing strength in the old, and poetry in the vertical lines of a forgotten frame. People stop here, even in the smallest of yards. They pass beneath it like a quiet ritual. Children play with the hanging pots, spinning them gently. Guests sit nearby, backs to the breeze, admiring how something so simple could feel so sacred. There is no noise here, only the hum of bees and the faint rustle of leaves above. The door doesn't lead to anywhere, but it holds everything. Texture, contrast, surprise. It creates space. It welcomes pause. And that's what every good garden needs, something that catches the eye, then releases it gently. A detail that doesn't shout, but sings. The trellis made from a door reminds us that the garden is not just for growing. It's for remembering, for imagining, for repurposing not only objects, but ideas. So let the door stand. Let it hold blooms instead of secrets. Let it welcome vines instead of visitors. Let it be a frame not of entry, but of beauty. At the quiet meeting of two garden walls, where the fence turns a corner and the sun angles just right, a cluster of coconut shells brings unexpected life. They're not large, not fancy. Just have shells once destined for the compost pile, now transformed into something quietly magical. Mounted neatly onto fence panels, they create a rhythm across the wood, a beat of shape, color, and bloom. Each one is painted by hand in soft tones that echo the garden's own palette: misty blue, weathered rose, creamy almond, pale moss. Inside, the soil is rich and warm, cradling fall's toughest flowers, miniature marigolds, sedum rosettes, and button-like chrysanthemums. In some, Japanese anemones stretch and trail like delicate dancers, spilling gently over the shell's edge. It's a small detail, but it changes everything. The corner, once overlooked, always shaded, becomes a highlight. Visitors follow the fence line with their eyes, then their feet, and finally their hands, reaching out to admire the tiny worlds held in each bowl. The gardener smiles, knowing the secret: these are shells from old market coconuts, cracked for drinks and scraped clean. Nothing fancy. But in their new home, they offer something beyond expectation. They soften the hard lines of the fence. They elevate the simple into the sacred. When the wind blows, the shells don't clatter, they whisper. When the rain falls, they cradle it like teacups. When the morning comes, sunlight warms their curved backs and wakes the flowers within. This isn't gardening for show. It's gardening for soul. A reminder that space is not measured by width, but by intention. That even the tiniest corner can bloom when given attention. That even the most unlikely vessel can hold beauty. In a world of big gestures and bold designs, the thrifted coconut shell planter is quiet rebellion. It's resourceful, gentle, soft-spoken, but its charm is undeniable. And as autumn deepens and petals shift from bright to warm, these fence corner shells will still hold their place, humble and proud, proof that nothing is ever truly wasted.